I've never done this before.
I'm not sure I have
It
either.
might be fun.
Not in this format, but let's give it a whirl.
Okay.
So I'll just say a little prayer.
Yeah.
Lord, thank you for this opportunity to talk, and thank you
Yes,
for my
Jesus.
friends who are here, and I just pray that as Doug asks me questions and I answer, Lord, I just pray that you be glorified and help me to bring the testimony that you have done in my life and the way that you saved me. Lord, help me to just speak it naturally in the most truthful way possible, I pray. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Okay. Well, I'm here with my dear friend John Paran that I've known for decades.
That's right. Since the 70s.
And we're recording this because we think that there's a lot of people, family, friends, and grandchildren, who knows how long this will go, who have been dramatically affected by the events John's going to describe. He's going to talk about probably the most important things that ever happened in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought you'd want to hear this. So John, in about 30 seconds, can you summarize what was the most important event in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. The most important event in my life was in 1975 when God rescued me from a lot of things, definitely including drugs and going down the wrong path, and I became a Christian, and he gave me the ability to give up all those things overnight and to follow him. Since it's 2023 now, and God came into my life in 1975, and I've been following him ever since.
There you go. So tell us about what things were like in 1975 for the U.S. as a whole.
For the United States as a whole?
The U.S. as a whole. What was going on?
Well, I believe, at least in my situation, when I was experiencing, relative to what we're going to be talking about, the Jesus movement was definitely taking place, you know.
Okay.
Being
The
15
Vietnam
almost,
War was a big thing
Right.
in the 70s, but it was sort of over by 75,
Yeah.
right?
Right, and being 15 years old at that time, in 75, I was probably not that much up on geopolitics and the war. Of course, I heard of it, you know. I remember in '68 when Martin Luther King Jr. got assassinated and all that kind of stuff. But I was not really keeping up too much at that time.
Okay, so tell us about what it was like when you were a little kid and what your family was like, and then the significant changes that took
Right.
place.
Well, my dad, I was born in Erie, Pennsylvania. I came up to Montgomery County, Maryland, I believe when I was about 3 or 4 years old. So we rented a house in Parkland, and my dad bought a house in, I believe, 1965 or 66, a brand new house in Rockville, Maryland. And just kind of grew up going to school and having pretty much a normal life. My dad did pretty good. He worked for the government, so I felt like I was having a good childhood.
Okay, and you had one sister, right?
One sister.
What's her name?
Martine.
So that might be Aunt Martine.
Yes. French
Or
name.
great Aunt Martine.
My parents, my mother's side is French, my dad's side is Lithuanian. So.
Interesting. Cool. Okay, so suddenly you're 12 years old or something, or
Right.
you're coming out of elementary school.
Coming out of elementary
and
school.
things started shifting for you. What?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is I was very much involved in sports in elementary school and playing baseball.
So like Little League? Or?
Yeah, Little League. I made the All-Star team twice as a pitcher, and that type of stuff. Did real good in field day in elementary school. Got all the blue ribbons and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so I got baptized when I was 12 years old. I don't know exactly what it meant to me at the time. In this particular church I went to, when you're 12, you go to a baptismal course and you get baptized.
Okay.
I can say that probably about that time, after I got baptized, that's probably when I got involved in doing, I think it was 12 and a half or 13 is when I started really doing drugs. My friends had turned me on to smoking pot.
Wow.
And
so let's back up just a little bit there. So you went to church.
Right.
And a lot of it didn't seem very real or accurate. Was there anything about it that seemed actually real and true, or? Or was it just some social thing you had to do?
Maybe more social at this church. I think it was a very loving church. That's when my mother describes it, and that's and so on. It is, you know, a good church in that regard. But it was, I guess, what we call today more of a social gospel church. It wasn't really a church that talked about the need for a lot of salvation and a lot of things that I probably believe in today.
Okay, so this is 1975, and how many, or this is, what year is this when you started smoking drugs?
Well, I would say it had to be at least 1973.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to my first concert.
At that point,
Black
the
Sabbath
Vietnam
concert.
War is still
Right.
going.
13 was my-
Nixon's getting
Right.
impeached and
Mhm.
kicked and resigning, and so you're 13.
Sing a rock and roll concert at the Capitol Center every 2 weeks, you know, so Black Sabbath was my first concert, you know, I was 13 years old. You know.
Okay, 13 without adult supervision.
Oh yeah, you name every big band, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Eric Clapton, ZZ Top. I went to all of them, probably about 25 concerts.
So tell us what smoking dope, marijuana, was like back then.
Well, yeah, so, I don't know, the first time I smoked it, nothing happened. The second time I smoked it, I got a really nice high from it, and then, like so many other people have said, it's never the same as the first high again, you know.
Wow.
You do it social with your friends, you know, you experience some things, but the reason why I believe it is kind of a gateway drug, at least it was for me, is because you're always looking for that same experience again, and you can't find it, so what you do is you turn to different drugs. At least I did, that's what I did in my case.
That's really different. So, and people who are watching this probably won't understand about marijuana, but did you have to be secretive about that?
Well, in school, yes, but I'll be honest with you, I did smoke a lot of pot in my house with my friends when my parents were in the house. And we burned incense.
You told them it was incense,
We told
right?
them it was incense, and they kind of allowed cigarette smoking in the house back in that time in history. So,
Well,
I will say one thing, my parents possibly knew about it but didn't want to deal with it, but for the most part I think they've been kind of oblivious.
Wow. So, you know, my little story, this is your story, but my story is about that time I was in high school, and the police parked this unmarked van across the street from the football stadium and photographed what was happening, and then one day 30 arrest warrants appeared on the principal's desk.
Oh my gosh.
So it was completely illegal. You could go to jail. I had friends who got sent off to lumber camp for smoking marijuana. That was like the youth restoration camp. So it's not like it probably is for you, dear viewer, where it's just yet another thing you can do to have fun with your friends.
We were definitely afraid of police officers whenever we were doing that kind of thing, you know.
There you go.
We definitely, it's not like today where they don't do anything.
So who were your friends, and how did you get your initial introduction?
Well, the first,
You don't have to do last names,
yeah.
but I don't think they'll.
Billy and George, I'll say, they were brothers. They were my first introduction.
Okay.
To smoking pot. It was actually, I believe, late at night, close to my backyard.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so keep going. There you are. You're 13.
Right.
That's pretty early age, and
My mother, yeah, 13.
and you're going to concerts, and what else is going on, and what progressed from there?
Well, in 7th grade is when I started doing that stuff. I would say by 8th grade, definitely a lot more. I was starting to use other drugs, you know.
Quaaludes?
Yes, I did Quaaludes. We call them Roper 714 back then, you know.
That's real stuff. They said
that-
you couldn't get addicted to it, but you could.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't get a hold of too many of them, so I never got addicted.
Mhm.
But a lot of acid, a lot of PCP,
Wow.
a lot of speed. Not a lot of speed, but, you know, definitely speed. Never did cocaine or anything like that.
Okay,
Wasn't
that was
available.
before cocaine, really.
Yeah, thank God.
I don't know. You want me to continue to contribute my little bits and pieces?
Sure, go ahead.
Well, when I was in high school, some of my friends raided a dentist's office and got Novocaine, and they were snorting Novocaine.
Oh my God.
but keep going, so it's
The
getting
only thing I
thicker
stored
now.
was glue. We did that too.
Gosh.
We'd spray Permaclear in a paper bag and we'd huff it, you know.
Gosh,
Not good for you. Not good for you.
that's pretty serious.
Pretty serious, yeah.
And
I didn't do it too many times.
Were
Maybe 5 or 6
there
times.
effects or?
We'd get super high for a short period of time.
Okay, but in general, your life as you're 13, you're 14,
Yeah.
what's it like?
Still, my parents were, I still had a good relationship with my parents. I would still go to this church sometimes, and I remember sometimes, you know, I would even do a bong hit before I go to church with my parents.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, I just remember that, but it's not.
And we have a couple of photos that we're going to show at this point of you at that time.
Okay.
Your hair was a little different from
Yeah.
yours now, wasn't it?
He had a lot more.
Okay, keep going.
Okay, so as I got more and more into it, I got more and more separated from interests and hobbies like sports, you know,
Mhm.
that type of thing. I would also notice that when I would go to parties with friends, I would get very quiet. Everyone else seemed to be more jovial and talkative, and I think the effects of doing these drugs has kind of made me subdued and just, you know, to myself. And I started feeling kind of lonely, you know, at that point, you know.
Wow.
But yet I was doing this stuff every day, I guess, through addiction. I mean, I used to buy marijuana and sell it in ounces, you know. I wouldn't,
So you buy a pound and sell nickel bags or whatever?
actually, at my age of 15, all I could afford was quarter pounds. So I'd
Okay.
buy quarter pounds and sell, you know, I keep one of them and sell 3 of them and get my money back. And then sometimes people would sell me a certain amount of angel dust, and I would sell that. And stuff like
Okay,
that.
so there was I heard there was some sort of thing with the law that occurred? Didn't, okay, well, we may edit this out. Okay. But didn't you have some interactions with the police?
Not over drugs.
Oh, okay, well, well, tell us more.
Well, I don't think I had serious
There was
interactions.
this bank.
I don't think I
There
had
was this
serious
bathroom.
interactions with the police, other than the fact that a couple times we would sneak out at night and shoot out light bulbs, street lights, and the police busted us once and called my parents up at 3 or 4 in the morning. They had to come and pick us up. Other than that, I used to have a mini bike before I was 16, and I used to drive it around a lot, and the cops would chase us quite a bit. And one time a cop chased us down 2 or 3 times, like in the same cop in like a week or 2, and then he made it so that I could not get my driver's license when I was 16, and my next door neighbor was a lawyer, and he went to court for me and made me write a 5-page paper on the dangers of driving a mini bike without a license, and I did so, and I got exonerated. That's kind of,
Okay,
at that age,
that's-
that was it, you know, for the cops.
That's kind of small potatoes.
Small potatoes.
Okay, so anyway, you've been doing this for a couple of years, and now you're 15, and tell us about the next bit.
Yeah. So, I would say a year before I was 15, when I was still 14, I went to the beach with my parents. My parents let me bring a friend of mine. His name was Jim Hardman. And so we brought our stuff with us so that we could smoke our stub every night, you know, and my parents would let us out in the evening after dinner, we'd do our thing. And so in the Rehoboth Beach, there was a preacher that was on the boardwalk. He, kind of a soapbox guy. And he was talking about the need to repent. I remember he said that if you did drugs and smoked pot, you would go to hell, and all sorts of stuff like that. So we got into this conversation. So what we did is we decided to just talk about God. We went out on the beach, we lit up a bowl of pot, and talked about what he said, and do you believe this? And we kind of both said no. But you know, there was something about what he said that kind of, not so much the pot thing, but it stuck with me a little bit, especially when he started talking about God. And the interesting thing is, the next year, I remember going, you know, home and doing a hit of speed of beauty, and I thought that God was communicated to me for some reason. I think it's just because God was in my consciousness. I'm not attributing drugs to God or the Holy Spirit. I would start to really be concerned, I think, about my soul. I was, and this may sound kind of strange, but I've heard other people say the same thing. I actually, a couple times when I was doing acid trips, LSD, I would see Jesus with holes in his hand a couple times, you know.
Wow.
But I still thought drugs were a cool thing. That song "Sweet Leaf" by Black Sabbath was one of my favorite songs, and that was a song about pot, you know. So I was not really seeing the disconnect between drug use and God at the time, but I started to really believe in God.
Hmm.
So, anyways, as I was getting closer to the next year, my parents wanted to go back to a different beach, Virginia Beach, and this time I was able to take another friend, a different friend named Steve. But so we're looking forward to that. And I did say to myself, something's going to happen between me and God on this next beach trip. I say that to myself because I was thinking about God a lot. A couple things happened before that trip that's pretty important for me to say. One was about 2 or 3 weeks before that trip, I was hanging out with Steve a lot because we were kind of looking forward to this beach trip. And behind Announcement Hill, Kmart area, I got jumped by about 6 or 7 greasers. We call them greasers back then. We were the hippies, they were the greasers.
Yeah.
And so anyways, they worked me over pretty well. They held a knife to me, threatened to kill me, got kicked in the face, got beat up, all sorts of stuff. It wasn't good. The reason why it started was a couple of things that I don't have time to explain before that, but they were all lies. So anyways, that was not fun. They didn't beat Steve up there because they had something against me that had to do with me doing drugs. I know that much.
Okay.
So, anyways, we're still getting closer to this beach trip, and the next thing, about maybe after that, I was probably still a little bruised up with that. Steve and I were down at my junior high school. It was summertime now, school was not in session, and we were partying with a good friend of mine named Kathy Beatty. She was on a girlfriend, just a good female friend, and we're passing a bowl around. And she starts getting a Bible out and starts talking, reading from the Psalms. At the time, she was going to a Bible study called Take and Give in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And so she was reading us some scriptures, and, you know, I thought, oh, that's pretty cool, you know. I didn't say a whole lot. Steve didn't say anything. So anyways, that, as I explain later, my story becomes somewhat important. So anyways, we get to the beach, and pretty much the same thing as before. We brought our reefer with us. We sat every night, did our thing. Parents let us go out and eat, and we're supposed to be back at 11 o'clock every night, which we did for the most part. And so the last night was a Saturday night. We're leaving to go home Sunday. Lo and behold, we don't have any more pot. We smoked it all in 6 days. We thought we had enough for 7.
Okay.
So what do? We go looking around, and there was this vacant, abandoned house not too far from the boardwalk. We meet up with some guys. They were all starting to party. We met them, you know, back then, that's the way it is. You just meet people and do that. So they started lighting a bowl around. Never came to me or Steve, because the cops came all of a sudden. Sirens came, everything. Everyone split and just went off in different directions. They never caught anybody. So we kind of take a deep breath. We go start walking on the boardwalk. It's about 9 o'clock at night. And lo and behold, this guy with the Get Smart, Get Saved button, he was in a group called the Forever Family. And it was part of the Jesus movement in the 70s. They dressed like typical hippies. They had long hair. You know, even though it was summertime, you had an army coat on, the long pants, the blue jeans, the boots, all that stuff. So,
But most importantly was the red button.
the red button, Get Smart, Get Saved.
And they were not small buttons either.
No, they were big. And so We talked for 3 hours, from 9 o'clock till 12 midnight. And I had a ton of questions to ask him, about what's this guy said last year about going to hell? Am I going to hell? And he talked about the scriptures, and the need to be saved, the need to be a Christian. I told him my biggest objection. What's this? We have a guest market safe one. Okay, I wore this for a long time. We'll get to that later anyways. I said, are you telling me that my mother, because everyone loved my mother, I'm telling you, my mother was like, she used to teach French at the junior high school, the tutor for free. I mean, she was the nicest person on the block, everyone loved my mother. So I said, okay, I can see what you're saying about me, but are you trying to tell me my mother is going to go to hell if she doesn't become a Christian? Because she was not a Christian at the time. She was a really nice person. And, he was not very politically correct on anything. So he said, your mother needs to accept Christ, like everyone else in the world. So anyways, that was an objection that I had that was hard for me to deal with at the time. But they said, why don't you come over to our fellowship house? So I got there about 12 o'clock, Virginia Beach.
Okay, we got to back up. What is a fellowship house?
Okay, fellowship house. The church, the Forever family had 120 different fellowship houses along the East Coast primarily,
Okay.
As far out as Ohio and up in Montreal in Canada.
Okay.
And it was an organization that started in the very early 70s, and their thrust was to evangelize people. It was basically part of the Jesus movement.
But people lived
in these
not
houses.
family members, just
Not families.
whoever became part of the Forever family
Right.
lived and it was in a Forever family house.
It was
a fellowship house.
Right. There was men and women that lived in these houses, but it was, take my word, I was in it for 4 years, I'll tell you about it later, but it was not sexual. There was not sexual stuff going on. They were just out trying to spread the gospel, although they kind of had their ways that made them up in as kosher as other ways. But anyways, they talked to me, and I'd say, walk up to the house, I walk up the steps, and there were people there that were seeing people throw up from drinking beer. Not that they were members of the fellowship house, but these are people that were invited to it. And some of them never made it in because they were just sitting there barfing and stuff like that, and I was kind of freaking out. They got invited, but I guess, obviously, so I was kind of like, whoa, what am I getting into here? So anyways, I get there. They were really nice people when I got in there, and they talked to me about the need for salvation. Talked to these people for 2 hours. I prayed with them, decided to make this commitment. I knew what I had to give up. The cigarettes, the drugs, the drinking, and all that stuff. And after I got done praying, they said, well first they looked at me and they told me that verse in the Bible, the angels are rejoicing now and all this kind of thing. And I just kind of looked really depressed. And they said, I don't understand. Like, why aren't you happy? You just got saved. And the reason why is because I knew what I had to do. I knew that my life was going to change radically. Mm-hmm. I knew that I couldn't deal drugs anymore. I couldn't do this anymore. Mm-hmm. I took it seriously. So I was like very sobered. I was not smiling, even though on the inside I felt really good about what I did. Okay. Next thing, they turned to Steve. I guess with me for obviously the last 4 or 5 hours, he heard everything I heard. And they said, Steve, what are you going to do? You heard everything. Said Steve did hear everything clearly. And he said, well, I think I'm going to just go ahead and do what I'm doing. I think 50 is a good age. I'll get saved when I'm 50. I want to party, live my life, enjoy it. This guy named Charles Jones said, Steve, that sounds like a good plan, but what would happen if you got hit by a car, died tomorrow? And he said, I'll probably end up going to hell. So anyways, so we go back home. We get back to the apartment where my parents were, 2:33 in the morning. My parents had the police out looking for us because we were supposed to be back at 11. So my mother and my parents are thinking, okay, I brought John up here, I brought John's best friend here, they're both 15 years old, and they both are missing. What am I going to tell Steve's parents, you know?
Wow.
So anyways, I told my mom what happened, I told her I became a Christian, I got saved with this organization called the Forever Family. She didn't believe a word of it. I showed her some literature, she thought I was nuts.
Okay.
Guess what, I can't blame her. I remember driving home the next day, sitting in the back seat. Car with my sister was there. I should have brought the fact that my sister and her girlfriend was on a vacation, but we didn't hang out too much because we had nothing in common at the time. The car was so silent on the way home. Steve and I, we sat in the back. I don't think he said a word. I don't think I said much either. It was just kind of really strange going back home. So I got back home, you know. Steve, who was my friend, told the whole neighborhood, told everybody, told all my friends what I did. And told me that, you know, Paran must have put that on drugs or something like that, you know, he was Jesus freak, you know. So, anyways, everyone knew about it, you know. I had my own friends coming to me asking me what happened. Can I buy your bong? You know, I had this big, huge U.S. bong. They wanted to buy all my paraphernalia, you know. When they found out, you know, so I did get a chance to share with a few of them. But yeah, pretty much, didn't have a whole lot of friends anymore at that point.
Yeah.
I did see my friend Kathy Beatty, who I said earlier was passing this bowl around with us and referring on this trip. Saw her at the bottom of my street because she lived close by, talking to a girlfriend that I didn't recognize. They were both sitting there having a cigarette. I said, wow, I think I'll tell her what happened, you know. But I don't know this other girl, so I'm kind of embarrassed. I don't want to talk about Jesus and, you know, this other girl there, you know. So anyways, I think I'll catch her the next day or two and do that. And the sad thing is, I didn't have that much time because a day and a half later, she got raped and killed in the same place that I got jumped. Yeah, yeah. And not going to get into details, but it was a big news story forever. People were, even to this day, are still looking for the person who did it. So that sent tremors through the neighborhood, that whole story. And then the next part of the story would be that shortly after that, I'd say about 3 weeks after I got back, it's summertime, we're not back at school yet. I was sleeping until 9 in the morning. My sister comes knocking on the door and wakes me up. Comes in, I think it was, I forgot what newspaper was, Gazette or some one of these papers. She said, look at this. My friend Steve Liddy, and his brother actually, on the back of a motorcycle, late at night, about 1 in the morning, out near Sunshine, Maryland. They hit a VW bug and both of them died instantly.
Wow.
This is the fella who got the warning. What would happen if you would have died tonight? Wow. So that shook me up a lot.
Okay,
Now,
so let me back up a little bit here. So you had this experience at the beach where you made this commitment,
right.
then you get reintroduced to your everyday life,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't have any like Christian friends,
Right.
or you don't have a church that's really
Right.
sharing the gospel.
Correct.
Or okay.
Well, let me show you how that came about. This group called the Forever Family, which is, it has fellowships all over the country. I got saved in Virginia Beach. They had one in Silver Spring, Maryland, right on
Okay.
2nd Avenue.
So
So
where were you, like Wheaton? Or
I was in Aspen Hill. It was about a 20-minute drive down the road.
Okay.
20, 25 minutes. They told me the day I got saved to give me the phone number, the address, and they told me to make sure I get connected with these people.
So it sounds like Mr. Paran here was scaring the daylights out of his community, and word on the street was, "Don't hang around John Paran. Everyone's dying."
You could conclude that. However, I will say that was the last of my friends that died. But on that point that you just brought up, a lot of people came up to me and asked me, did Steve, the fact that he died so quickly, did it have anything to do with the fact that he went around and told the whole school and told everyone that Paran flipped out on drugs and he's now Jesus freak? So he went around and pretty much, I didn't have to tell anybody what happened to me. He did it all for me. And so people said, do you think? And of course, I'm not going to answer that question. I would never say, yes, God killed Steve because he did this. I would never say that. But that's what people were asking me.
Okay, you didn't get beat up,
Right?
and you met the guy from the Forever family.
Yes.
Okay.
His name was Rudy, and so I started going to their fellowship home, and that.
Some people live there, some people
Yeah.
visited a lot, or what?
Right. So there was a lot of young people my age that obviously couldn't live there, so we kind of went definitely on the weekends and tried to come during the evenings too.
Okay.
Yeah, which I did, and so I was with that organization for about 4 years.
Okay.
First of all, you had to memorize 12 verses in the Gospel of John right away, before you can get your badge.
Okay.
Your badge. You had to memorize like these 12 verses in the Gospel of John. They were good Gospel verses. The thrust was when we would come out. Usually, young people like myself would sleep over on the weekends at the fellowship house as much as we could, like on Friday and Saturday night. We would try to 2 or 3 nights a week go over to the fellowship house, and then they would take us to various places to go out and hand out tracts and talk to people and share the Bible with people. So I stayed with them till I was about 17 and a half. And then I moved to New York City with them. I wasn't even 18 yet. I finished high school early by going to summer school. 2 summers in a row to get more credits so I can get out of there. Didn't have friends in high school. Didn't want to be there. I was considered Jesus freak, kind of ostracized. So anyway, I went to New York City, and they had a big thing up there where we'd go out in the streets for like 2 years and do the same thing. They had a carpet cleaning business up there with 150 trucks on the road every day in Manhattan. As a matter of fact, Seinfeld, there is a Seinfeld show where they talk about where Seinfeld, they get their carpets cleaned. And they talked about that religious group that cleans carpet, and they actually had some guys come in and stuff like that. That's how big it was that we even made it on Seinfeld. So I was there for a while, and then 3.5 years. I'm thankful that God used them.
Yeah.
Because I was a hippie, and these people were hippies, and I could relate to them, and I couldn't relate to traditional church.
Okay.
But after a while, the new car smell, that all wore off.
Yeah.
So the day I decided to leave, I just said, I'm getting out of here. And so I got on my motorcycle and I started driving up Connecticut Avenue. And I saw this guy named Tim Merle, who was sitting at the bus stop. And I sat and talked to him because Tim used to be the fellowship leader at the Silver Spring House that I was at about 3 years ago when I first came to it. So Tim left because he couldn't marry this girl, and he became very bitter, and he left God, he left Jesus, and anyways, he got really angry, and he started telling me all this stuff. He said he was an atheist, he was this and that, and all this kind of stuff. And there was something inside of me that was saying, see, they're right. They told me that if I leave I'm going to become a backslider. And they pointed out all these people that have left their organization and it didn't end well. So I'm on the way home, and I bump into Tim, and I'm saying, maybe this is a sign from God that I'm doing the wrong thing.
Okay.
I just kept on going. So anyway, they get home, and my parents, that would have been about June, July. My mom started taking me to Alpine Church at that time. That's where she was going.
Okay.
And they wanted me to go to Bible school.
So tell me about Alpine Church when you first came into it.
There was already 2 or 3 people at Alpine at that time that used to be in the Brother family.
Okay.
Bob Pagler, Angie Bro,
Okay.
and the Jim Marshall, I believe. So, anyways, I did get a warm welcome when I was there, and I didn't know where to go. The church, I started going there for a while.
I know you ended up at Bible school. Can you
Right.
tell
Well,
us a little bit about
about
that?
3 months later, 'cause I got out in June. That next September, I was at Valley Forge Christian Bible College.
Did you meet anybody important there?
At school?
No. Not yet.
Not like my wife, no.
Okay.
My wife was a different school.
Wrong
That's
school.
wrong
So how long were you at Bible school?
Okay, so I was in Bible school at that particular, I ended up getting a 4-year degree in Bible with 3 colleges.
Mhm.
So that particular school, the only reason why they let me in is because you didn't have to have an SAT or a high GPA to get in there.
Okay.
And I think it's because they needed money. I'm not joking when I say that. So I got there. They did put me on probation the first semester,
Mhm.
and said that you have to do well or you can't stay here. So believe it or not, I did make the dean's list my first semester. The guy that was overseeing me, when back then I had to show my report card to him, you know. Back then it was not on a computer. All the grades were written in pen by your prof. And so I had to show him at the end of that semester my grades. And he said, I don't believe it. I think you're lying. I think you forged this.
Wow.
So I had to go back to each one and have them sign off that I actually got these A's. And
That's
you know,
amazing.
so anyways, that's a true story.
So where'd you go from Valley Forge?
Valley Forge. I went to King's College in Briarcliff Manor, New York. Now it's in that school's now in Manhattan. So Dr. Cook, how in the world are you, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah.
Walk with the king today. And
Walk with
be
the
a
king
blessing.
today and be a blessing. That's right. That was a good school. I really liked Dr. Cook. I said maybe I should go to Messiah College. Okay, so I'm on my 3rd college at this point. And the only reason why I remember Messiah because at my first year of college we saw the 2nd chapter of Acts and Phil Keaggy there and a band called David all in one concert.
Cool.
And that was pretty cool. So I don't know why I didn't think about Messiah on my 2nd college.
Because I wasn't there yet.
Yeah, there you go. So my wife's in the background, speaking the truth here. So anyways,
As always.
I get to Messiah, and that school I did my 3rd year of college and my 4th year and graduated there. And on my senior year, not my 3rd year, my
Tell them
senior
what
year,
your mother was praying.
my mom was praying for me to find a life partner, you know. And I got to the point, in all honesty, by my 4th year of college, since I didn't have a girlfriend, I got to that point where I just said, you know, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I'm not gonna pursue this. I mean, you know, in my senior year, you know. So, anyways, lo and behold, senior year. I guess it would have been the 2nd semester.
September.
Okay, I'm going to cut this off. We will come back again. We'll interview both of you together, and we'll talk about
That's a
early,
How we
great-
met.
Yeah, that's a
the
great
early
idea.
days of the bromance. But as you reflect on your life,
Mm-hmm. Are we still on tape?
yeah,
Okay.
as you reflect on your life, what has you convinced right now that Jesus really rose from the dead?
What has me convinced that Jesus really rose from the dead?
And that all this Jesus stuff is real?
You know, ever since that time when God rescued me from everything, my addictions and everything like that, and even though I was got saved in a very unusual Christian group, he became so real to me, and his word became so real to me because I would read the word a lot. I've seen him answer prayers in my own life. I've seen him, I've had him not speak to me audibly, but I've had him, I feel he's guided me and led me and so many things. And, you know, the Bible says our spirit testifies with his spirit that we are the children of God. And there's times in my life that when I've heard a certain message or seen something like that, you know, tears come to your eye. You know it's the Holy Spirit, you know. I would say, you know, I have the Holy Spirit that Jesus gave me when I got saved. And that Spirit's been with me ever since. And I've no doubt in my mind. Well, I would say so. I'm still alive, for one thing.
Unlike Steve.
Well, no, but I'm not. But
We've
so
met
many
a
of my
lot of
other
his
friends
friends
that,
with Dad.
because, you know, I have a lot of party friends. A lot of them today are dead
Okay.
because of that lifestyle, or in jail.
Or jail, yeah.
So
Yep.
that's huge, obviously. And the fact that I met a wonderful woman, Mary Lee, who's sitting about 6 feet away from me right now. We have a wonderful marriage. We've been married for 36 years. We have a Christian marriage. Found a wonderful, beautiful Christian woman. We pray together. We read the Bible together. So, I mean, you know, wouldn't trade it for anything.
Okay, look the camera in the eye and tell the people the final thing you want to tell them.
Jesus is the most important thing in anyone's life. If you know him, God bless you. If you don't, please search the scriptures and realize, ask God to speak to you and come into your life. And that's the most important decision anyone can make, period.